Shalom, shalom. So great to be able to greet people again. Welcome back to our weekly halachic discussion, Hilchos Lashon Harah. This week I want to discuss another real-life example of the complexity of Hilchos Lashon Harah. I was asked to head a Q&A of rabbis with my group of 16-year-old boys, and the hotbed issue that they always ask about is are the different rabbis' positions, some from the religious Zionists and some from the Chareidi perspective, about yeshiva students going to the Israeli army. Now, if you know me, you probably know my position. Why is this a halachic Hilchos Lashon Harah shaila? The reason it's a Hilchos Lashon Harah shaila is because the Chafetz Chaim writes explicitly, and this is a surprise for a lot of people, that Lashon Harah applies to groups. Just because it's a group doesn't mean that if it's disparaging, if I'm talking about, be it religious Zionists, be it Charedim, maybe possibly even according to Reform or Conservative, it may still be a big sin of Lashon Harah to speak negatively about them. I'm saying that about Reform Conservative because if we consider them Tinok Shenishba, so then Lashon Harah would still apply about disparaging a group. And the Chafetz Chaim writes this is even worse than disparaging an individual. So if my discussion will descend into negative name calling other groups names, calling other rabbis bad things, not sticking to the positions, and generally just leaving people with a bad taste about the other group of people, it would be problematic on a Lashon Harah level. On the other hand, of course, there are many discussions that rabbis have had about this issue. That's because this is Litoelis. It's in order to educate people who need to know whether they should join the army, what should they educate their children, who should they vote for. This is a Litoelis issue. And therefore, I believe that it is totally permissible to discuss this issue in public as long as it's done sticking to the issues. I'm not talking about individuals and chas v'shalom not name-calling, but rather understanding that there are two different positions in the Torah world, in the halachic world, at least two different positions, not necessarily putting people into boxes, recognizing that there's different rabbis within different communities who feel differently, and discussing the issues, explaining, for example, if you believe, as I do, that, there's a legitimate position of that yeshiva students should join the Israeli army, explaining halachically why, based on the Mishnah and Sota, based on the Rambam, and explaining the halachic perspective on the other side, the Rambam Shemitah and Yovel, but explaining the religious Zionist position, explaining the Shitos. That's something that the rabbis throughout all the generations have done, sticking to the issues, and at the same time treating the other side with great respect, recognizing that there generally are two sides to the coin. The different Torah sources can be analyzed differently, and chas v'shalom not denigrating any position, any people on the other side, any individuals, as long as they're following their Rabbanim and treating with great respect the Rabbanim, but still one can passionately and forcefully explain their halachic perspective. That's what we've seen throughout the generations. When the Ramban, when Rashi, when Rambam discusses their perspectives, they're allowed to say their issues, their perspective, but always it should be done with great respect and trotting carefully so as not to speak negatively about Am Yisrael. That's the tikkun that we need to wipe away the sinas chinam. At least that's where I'm at on this issue. Hope you enjoyed your weekly Hilchos Lashon Harah discussion. Have a wonderful week.